Good day, good evening. Tonight's scene in the serum again finds Stefan Braunfiedler in his apartment. He got out of work quite a bit early this evening after having finished everything ahead of schedule. He more or less left and started heading back home at about 15 after 2. 2:30, he's in his apartment. Or by 2:30, he's in his apartment. Doors are locked as usual, just to make sure that things are safe. Safe-ish. And he sits before his workbench, still braiding a little bit more of the twine, keeping it smooth, making it look like marine grade rope, the best of his knowledge. Replicating it. He looks at the sewing work he's done on the sails. Earlier this evening before work. And I'll actually make one for, I'll make decks and crafts for that. Ooh. Work overall, he didn't make any progress at all in the sails. He looks at them, realizing the difficulty that he's had. Stefan looks down at them, sighs. Just a little bit, he sighs. He leaves that set aside and continues working on the shape of the boat, the definition of the planks joined together. He's gotten several of the small soapstone pieces, which will be the on-deck moorings. And some even smaller pieces for the to represent the nails holding the planks together. He's got several little insets where those pieces will be inserted, pressure fit. And just a little bit of mortar, tiny bit of mortar, to give it that extra security. An hour and a half passes. Um, he occasionally stops here and there to do some sanding to make sure that the small soapstone pegs fit into the inset holes in the basalt. Sorry, the granite. Not basalt, it's granite. Yeah, black granite. They make sure that it that the small soapstone pegs fit into the dremeled holes into the granite properly. Takes another look at the lines of the boards, the shape on the side of the oh, the shape and lines of the planks effectively, the insets for the effective nails, the dremeled areas for the on-deck moorings, the shape of the moorings themselves. And make one for this current work. Previously, he made no progress this time. Yeah. He's made a bit more progress, bringing him up to 15 successes on it. He looks down at the work of the actual ship. Stefan has only applied or hasn't applied any amount of paint, and you can definitely tell that there's definition. You can see without too much space that in the shape, the shape of that he's forming the stone in, that of a ship, you can tell even in the black of the stone that it is made of wood planks, or supposed to be made of wood planks. He's begun to set the dremels for the masts. He's got small metal rings at a few points, which will be hidden behind the sails for, well, what he's been working on, his rope to fit through as it fits through the sail material itself. Overall, in 2 days, maybe a little bit more, 2 days, a few hours, he's gotten the ship together. He's gotten it ready to begin running the actual rigging, propping the sails up. He even has a couple little pennants, the Massachusetts state flag and small versions of a small version of the Massachusetts state flag and American flags being flown as a pennant from the back of the ship. It's even fashioned with a small amount of the soapstone, which he'll have plenty left over after this, and some of the granite chips, some of the chips that have traces of crystalline structure, and he's shaped specifically to put together a figurehead for the vessel. The form, the subject of which to represent not just vampiric existence, but all existence as a whole. Upon close inspection, the figure is neither male nor female, it's rather androgynous. Maritime in design. Definitely something of the sea. But he's purposefully left the shape a bit amorphous, as amorphous in shape, with still some definition, as the gender is left androgynous and mostly undefined. As Stefan continues his work, he begins to pick up the sails again to get some of the stitching done along the edges. These will be the channels for running the rigging. He sits back, grabs a needle and thread. The thread is a bit thicker. The stitching will be seen, probably the most noticeable up close. May not be as noticeable from a distance, but he sits back and begins to sew the fabric. So something he's had to research in recent nights, something he's had to grab a couple books on because of his unfamiliarity. And as he sits there, as he sits sewing the sails a little bit, he picks up his materials, tools, moves over to one of his armchairs, and puts on any music. He searches the dial a little bit until he finds something 10, 20 some years back, right? Musically, something either from the 80s or the 90s. It just sits there taking in the sound. It's rather soothing. rather comfortable. I'll actually make one more. I'll make one for that work. As he sits there, he kind of loses himself a little bit. His mind and body more or less go on autopilot. And the stitching this time actually comes together. He actually makes smooth lines of thread along the edge of the sails. Kind of crisscrossing them a bit in a rope pattern. One channel will be for rope. The other channel will be for a couple dowels, which are already prepared to act as counterweights, as counterbalance as they hang. These, of course, being the jib to actually frame the sails against the mast. And after a bit of time, he walks back over and begins to put the final touches, rigging the ship, making sure that the pennants, the flags, state and nation are put together. He wasn't told a name for the vessel. So he leaves that open-ended. That's something that, perhaps Axel will come up with once he sees the piece, once he delivers it to this person he's working for. And that brings the total to 18 successes. Yes. Once he sits down, he begins to put the final touches. He begins to put things together. The last few small soapstone pegs at measured points to represent the nails holding the planks together against the actual skeletal structure of the vessel. The mass framing the sail, running rigging throughout, tying it to various points according to photographic guidelines to keep it accurate, or as accurate as he can for functionality. More for functionality than form. As the night winds down, it grows closer to morning. He catches himself before passing out like he did the first night, realizing the fatigue is setting in. He doesn't have long before the sun rises. He puts down the tools he's working with, the little pieces he's working with. Gets up off the stool, makes his way over to his bed. He just kind of collapses on it as the sun rises and the scene fades to black.